Ketheric Thorm is quite the interesting character. While maybe a bit of a random character to talk about next, I felt it time. I've been thinking about him lately, and furthermore, he's voiced by J.K. Simmons. That's wild. But anyway, without further ado, let's talk about Ketheric Thorm. So as I randomly always do, let's talk about this great man, right's appearance. Ketheric has straight gray hair kept shoulder length and tucked behind his little pointed ears. His face is wrinkled both by his glare and age, and he keeps a thick full beard that connects to his hair. Quite snazzy, honestly. Ketheric also wears a simple circlet with the skull of Merkel and an extravagant yet very well-crafted suit of armor that marks him as the chosen of the Lord of Bones. I am absolutely obsessed with his armor, honestly. It was the first thing I thought when I saw him for the first time. So cool. Anyway, he also has his netherstone resting on his chest, protected by an ornate gold cage. Now let's talk a little bit about his personality. Though best described as a man broken by grief, Isabel also speaks of him as a loving, doting father while she was growing up. One who had the admiration of his subjects for being just and fair. Full of love for his wife who he adored more than anyone else, very clearly. Tragedy, however, would turn him into a bitter, wrathful man, willing to cleanse Rithwind from any Selûnites just to spite the Moon Maiden for allegedly, or I guess not so allegedly, abandoning him. This is a huge part of why I think Ketheric is so understandable as a villain per se, since, well, someone like Auron has pretty much been born evil, although perhaps she could also go through some sort of repentance. She does not, or seemingly does not care or has cared the same way that Ketheric does or did, but that's neither here nor there. So, whatever the man once was, the Ketheric that the party encounters is definitely a callous one. Evident by his dismissal of Minthera and the goblins, ordering their torture and execution for failing him. It seems like he's nothing but just a cruel leader who is thirsty for bloodshed. Though you can speak to him like your equals, he will quickly condemn the party to death should they defy his orders. Above all, however, he is relentless in his pursuits, willing to just burn the entire world just to be reunited with Isabel, his daughter. Though he changed his patron god twice, he proved to be an ardent believer of each. Very, very, very paladin-like, huh? For Selûni, he built Moonrise Towers in her honor. For Shar, he built a grand temple under town in her name. And for Merkel, he amassed a great army ready to just absolutely obliterate Baldur's Gate to the ground. I don't know which one I'd prefer. Though horrible, you cannot deny that that is true dedication, huh? Through it all, he kept a note from Isabel close to him, showing that deep down, a small part of him still remembers the man he once was. But speaking of the man he once was, let's get into a little bit more of the history of how Ketheric Thorm got to be who he is now. So, a worshipper of Selûni, Thorm lived with his wife Melodia, or Melodia, I'm not really sure, but let's say Melodia, and daughter Isabel near the town of Rithwin, as governor of the region. Such was his devotion to the Moon Maiden that he would commission a local mason, Morfred, to construct a grand bastion in her honor. That be Moonrise Towers, you know the one. Yet disaster struck the Thorm family when Melodia passed away, leaving Ketheric to raise their daughter alone. With a child in his care, Ketheric persevered, and though doubts plagued his mind, he kept the Selûnite ways. As Isabel grew older, their happy years had a sour note. He disapproved of a budding relationship between his daughter and an immortal. You know, we know, Demaline, that one. Daughter of Selûnites, The conflict would be cut short, however, as tragedy would befall Ketheric once more, and his daughter Isabel passed away. As far as I'm concerned, we are not quite aware of why, but correct me if I am wrong. He then had his conversion to Shar. Grief-stricken and unable to cope with his loss, Ketheric Thorm renounced the worship of the Moon Maiden and turned to Shar, now the Lady of Loss. Moonrise Towers, that was once a bastion of light, then turned into a symbol of darkness and grief, and Thorm would systematically erase all Selûnite trace of the town, forcing all believers of the Moon Maiden to convert to Shar, flee, or die. Those who remained devout to Selûnite did so in secret, arranging a fledgling resistance, even as Sharan's spies began to infiltrate their gathering places. In Ketheric's downward spiral into darkness, Shar compelled him to build an army of dark justiciars. Beneath his hometown, in order to cleanse the world of light, Ketheric lured his daughter's lover, Eileen, who he had once quarreled with under Selûnite, now trapping her in a prison. He had the immortal demigod serve as a perpetual sacrifice for Dark Justiciar initiates, a design of his closest confidant, the necromancer Balthasar. As the terror gripped his town, the Harpers, a loose organization that roots out villainy, saw that Ketheric had committed murder, slavery, and desecration of temples most holy, and they then began to seek an alliance to end his reign. Rethren soon became the site of a wintertime battle between Ketheric's army and the combined forces of the Harpers and Druids of the Emerald Enclave. Ketheric's justiciars repelled the combined forces, and the Harpers unsuccessfully attempted surrender. The result of a bargain struck between Raphael and the Selûnite in secret Morfred, however, took place beneath the town, and Jorgir and his Merregons worked to annihilate Ketheric's Dark Justiciar army. In the end, the Sharan army was defeated, virtually all Dark Justiciars were killed, and finally Ketheric himself perished. Yet, before the final blow was struck, he would plague the lands with a shadow curse that would persist long after his demise, afflicting any survivors from the battle and all the inhabitants left. His body was buried in the Thorm Mausoleum. But we all know that wasn't the end of that guy, like he's coming back. More than 100 years later, though. So yeah, more than 100 years later, Thorm would be brought back from the dead by Merkel as General Ketheric Thorm. The god of death tasked the general to form an alliance with the apostles of the other two of the dead three and bring back death to the world, offering in payment the resurrection of Ketheric's daughter, Isabel. After reviving his daughter, with help from Balthasar once again, Ketheric's plan at a family reunion failed. When the revived Isabel saw his broken visage, she fled into the darkness, protected by her goddess Selûnite. The town had been ravaged by Ketheric's death rattle, the shadow curse, proceeding over the town for a century. All within had either died outright or been cursed to turn into horrific monsters. Undeterred, empowered by Merkel, and granted immortality by the Night Song, Ketheric began amassing an army of followers of the Absolute in order to march to Baldur's Gate and sow destruction, tasked with the recovery of the mysterious artifact, the only object that would be capable of ruining the Dead Three's plans, which of course we have, because of course, right? Anyways. So, what even is his involvement when we come into the picture? Well, since she rose from the grave 100 years ago, after the events that led to his downfall, Thorm serves as the main antagonist of Act 2 in the game, being introduced vaguely, or not so vaguely, during Act 1 through dialogue and in-game notes first, just to really make us feel how powerful and important he's going to be later on. As the party searches for ways to cure their tadpole situation, many clues point towards Moonrise Towers and Ketheric himself, and the party is ultimately tasked with bringing Ketheric down in order to rid the Shadowlands from its curse. If you want to help Lil Halsin and, probably millions of others, but anyway. But that is far from the only reason that he is in so many people's Death Note. He seems to be a cruel man who's done many bad things, like I just said previously, right? Through battle with him, and later exploring the illicit colony under the stronghold, the party discovers there's something more perverse going on with the tadpoles in their heads. Ketheric's alliance with Invar Gartash and Orin the Red is also exposed, and in the progress of the fight against him, it's revealed that it was Merkel that brought Ketheric back. like I just mentioned before, from the dead. But we all know that we do get to our guy, so with Thorm dead, the party now has one of the netherstones that power the trio, and the clues to their next destination is Baldur's Gate. But I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. Though the party learns about Ketheric during Act 1, his involvement in the cult of the Absolute is only explored during Act 2, allowing them to meet Ketheric himself at Moonrise Towers, before or when it's sieged. So in Act 2, let's just get into it. But honestly, before we talk about our first encounter with Ketheric face to face, I want to talk about his other Thorms, if you will, as I feel they are a huge part of who Ketheric is. So starting with, and please let me say this right, Garing Oath? Or Garen Goth. I'm not sure. But I like the word of Garing Oath, so that's what I'm gonna say. Thorm? Yeah, she's a weirdo, but let me explain. Garing Oath Thorm is a unique, intelligent undead, the tool master of the Rithwin tool house. Seemingly made of gold, she is driven by endless greed and is restless in enforcing the toll to cross the river to Moonrise Towers. Garing Oath's greed isn't limited to just her mannerisms, as she also wields powerful abilities that I am very scared of. Yeah, that are influenced by the amount of gold a character is carrying. As well, her visages grant her coin armor, whatever that is, which increases her total hit points. When approached, Garing Oath will quickly demand gold from the party. Besides attacking her, the player can toss her some gold, though she will simply demand more. Like endlessly, I'm pretty sure. When asked for a clear price, she will demand all of the player's gold. However, if giving anything short of 5,000 gold, Garing Oath will claim she's giving too little and attack. I am absolutely always sweating just a little bit when I have to go talk to her, because if the fight starts, I'm just a goner. Like, she's way too strong. I have just defeated her with, like, speech. I just talked to her and I'm like, you know, I'm here to replace you or whatever I'm in the mood to say. However, that is always extremely difficult if I'm playing any other class than like one with a lot of charisma, let's just say, or persuasion or whatever. But yeah, I have not yet fought the fight. Like, actually, I have just made her have an identity crisis and then perish. But I am sure that that day will come and it will be just terrifying. Just terrifying. So, next up is Tisabald Thorm. The party can speak with Tisabald Thorm at the Waning Moon to learn more about Ketheric's secrets. After drinking 3 times, Tisabald will start ranting. Can't we just all relate to that, honestly? I mean, swear to God. When approached, the closest party member will sit down at the bar. Tisabald will tend the bar and insist that you drink with him, and is docile unless refused, wherein he will immediately attack. So just drink with him or act like you're drinking with them. Should you accept, you must succeed a variety of ability saves and skill checks. The ultimate goal is honestly to outdrink him so that he may perhaps burst through his absolute overindulgence. There are 3 phases to each round of drinking, which are the drinking phase, story phase, and questions phase. In the drinking phase, you can choose to either drink the brew or avoid drinking it entirely by using sleight of hand, like I just said. If you choose to drink and failed the Constitution saving throw, you will immediately become drunk and have a disadvantage on the following saving throws, which is not ideal for this interaction if you do not wish to fight him or if you're not prepared for the fight. If you choose to use sleight of hand, the consequences for failure are more dire, as he will notice you're not drinking and will of course become hostile because how dare you not drink? Yeah, that's awful, of course. But after successfully drinking or faking, he will ask you to tell a story, which is based on the events of your journey up to this point. I find that detail a little neat, it's kind of funny. Each story then requires a performance check though. Should you fail the performance check, you will be given one final chance by Tisabald to weave a better story. This time using deception because it's not gonna be true, of course. Should you refuse to tell a story or fail the deception check because one can be so unlucky, he will also become hostile. Because how dare you not be a good storyteller, god damn it! If you succeed in either circumstances, you'll be able to ask Tisabald several questions pertaining to himself and our dear Ketheric Thorm. A second round of drinking then proceeds, this time requiring Constitution or sleight of hand to succeed. He will then request that you tell him more stories, this time involving blood spill. Each of these also require a performance check, and you will very likely always have a great number to choose from, depending on what major events you have encountered, of course. The more you explore and complete, the more choices are available, just in general. The final round of drinking requires Constitution or Sleight of Hand to succeed again. There is no need to tell stories or ask questions, though. So, either you outdrink him and you get all the info that you need about the fact that I don't even really know what he tells you other than the fact that Ketheric is immortal, and he calls him father, which I find quite odd because, you know, I don't really see the family resemblance. So in a way, I'm thinking that that is not his actual father, but whatever. I find this interaction quite fun though, because of just, it's quite tense, and what a random thing to just like sit down on a bar. And have you guys ever wondered what that tastes like? I mean, it seems like it's probably not good, but like, why do I want to taste it? But why do I want to taste it though? Like, give me a jug, give me a mug, do something, I don't know. Anyways, and last but definitely not least, Thorm, which is allegedly Ketheric's uncle. Did you know that? I did not know that, but very interesting. Malus is the undead master surgeon of the House of Healing, and very, very, very twisted follower of Shar. Having somehow kept his personality, despite being in the Shadowcursed lands, he believes graceful pain and calculating mutilation are the key to truly embracing the ideals of his dark faith. At his depraved hospital, he tirelessly works to train his undead nurses to hone such skill. Yet, their hollowed state leaves them lacking in ability, beyond dutiful assistance. You can talk to him and he's like, "So, do you need curing?" And you're like, "No, absolutely not." And you can also tell him that he's absolutely vile and then just attack him. But what I prefer to do is say that his nurses are just gonna make me sick, so stop. Like, you can't help me. Your nurses are just gonna make me sick. They're not ready for all of that. And then he's like, "Oh, really? Well, maybe you're right, huh? But then what?" And then you say, "They should practice on you," aka he dies. Just like flops on the table. I am absolutely obsessed with that part. It's pretty good. But yeah, the fight is fine too, but just smack them if you can, if you have enough charms, I suppose. But anyway, those side characters aside, let's talk about how our first encounter with Ketheric Thorm goes. I know a little bit backwards, but just let me do what I need to do here. The party's first encounter with Ketheric Thorm starts with the general judging the members of the Absolute's forces from the Goblin camp. What a blast from the past. This can include Sasa, Ketheric, and Minthera, if any of them are still alive, of course. Should Minthera be alive, he will send her to the dungeon to be punished. And we are then left with the goblins who, just attack him out of absolute fear and frustration, it seems. But even when impaled, or nearly decapitated, he just shrugs off the wounds as if they were absolutely minor annoyances, killing one of the goblins as punishment. He will leave the fate of the rest of the goblins to the player. What do you guys usually do to them? Like, I low-key feel bad doing anything to them. But, I mean, I guess they are bad, but whatever. Players can visit Ketheric Thorm before the finale by simply visiting on the top of Moonrise Towers, but attempting to go through the door that leads to him will make everyone around it hostile, so not exactly great, is it? And when speaking to NPCs, such as Chihira, which I know she's not a non-playable character throughout the whole thing, but whatever, let's just say that, Sariel and Balthazar, it will be revealed to some capacity, depending on who you speak of, that a magical relic grants Ketheric immortality, which we know is, of course, they may lean. Assisting Balthazar will reveal that sometime between his life as a Sharan and his time serving Merkel, Ketheric Thorm had discovered the Night Song and is now using it to render him unkillable, like we know. But now let's talk about Ketheric's final moments. Since he's not romanceable, there is not a romance section in this video, of course, sadly. Wah, cry, you don't get your beard. Yeah, I'm gonna just stop there. So, the party may encounter him again at the top of Moonrise Towers during the siege, and are granted a quick exchange with him before combat. Should Isabel be dead, he will recount his life story and his sacrifices, blaming the party for her death, but not punishing them, as he wishes to keep up the facade of the absolute judgment. If Aileen was saved, she will interrupt the conversation and combat will soon begin. Otherwise, the encounter begins as normal. Once his health drops to around 25%, Ketheric will flee down into the Mind Flayer colony, with the players giving chase. If, however, the player chose to let Balthazar take the Night Song in the Shadowfell, Ketheric will offer the player to pray at the altar of the Absolute. Doing so will skip the fight at the top of the tower, and the player will instead end up imprisoned in a pod in the Mind Flayer colony, where Balthazar is tasked with recycling the party into zombies and retrieving the mysterious artifact. Quite brutal. The player then needs to break out of the pods and defeat Balthazar in order to continue. Eventually, the party finds Ketheric having a conversation with Invar Gortash and Orin the Red, revealing the true form of the Absolute, like I said before. The party will then engage Ketheric once more, and when he falls, the last portion of the fight will begin, this time against the Apostle of Merkel. But before I continue to talk about how that goes, I will also mention that my favorite part is this: if the player passes multiple persuasion / and or intimidation checks, both atop Moonrise Towers and in the Mind Flayer colony, asking him to repent, the first half of this fight in the Mind Flayer colony will be skipped, as Ketheric just gives himself to Merkel. Defeated for good though, Ketheric's body will contain the first Netherstone. And I know that when you first see him with the artifact and stuff, you can also be like, but listen, this doesn't have to be your end, and he's very confused. He's like, why? How are you changing your mind? You were just like defeating all my guys. Like, why are you here being sweet to me? And yeah, I just always feel a little bit of a sense of sadness when it's all over. Even though, as mentioned, it is one of my favorite missions, I just feel like Ketheric could have had a type of redemption, trying to help us bring down the Absolute and have a sort of good ending with Isabel, maybe, but maybe like ultimately die at the hands of Merkel or something because, well, of defying him. And I have heard a little bird sing about the fact that it was supposed to be an option, or something like that would be supposed to be an option, that you could recruit him, but Larian decided against it, which is fair enough. But man, it would have been beautiful to see that redemption arc. But whatever path you choose, when Ketheric ultimately falls, it is the last time he falls, and his last words he utters, Isabel. Just so dang heartbreaking. But anyways, I think that is all I had to say about our dear Ketheric. So what do you guys think about him? Do you think he's a good villain? Do you think he's great? Do you wish you could have seen more of him, or that you could have helped him have some sort of redemption? Do let me know. But with all that being said, you guys, thank you so much for watching. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will hopefully see you in the next video. Goodbye!